Alright, let me tell you something. This happened when I was working the night shift at a gas station in a pretty desolate part of town. What they call a bad neighborhood, though honestly it didn't feel that dangerous. Just quiet. Too quiet. The kind of place where you can almost feel the air change at night. Like everything's holding its breath, waiting. I never really believed in that stuff, ghosts, spirits, the usual, but that night, well, let's just say I don't think I'll ever be the same. The shift was supposed to end at 5 a.m., but it always stretched on, right? Like time just never wanted to move when it was dark out. By 3 a.m., I was getting desperate for something to break the monotony. I've worked late shifts before, but this one felt different. Something felt off. I was behind the counter, chewing on gum, eyes half closed, trying to keep my focus. The usual weirdos came through the door. Drunks, tired truck drivers, the occasional weird teenager looking for snacks. But there was one guy that stood out. He didn't fit in. I remember him clearly because he looked out of place, not just in a weird night shift customer kind of way, but in a way that made my skin crawl. This guy, let's call him Mark, walked in at 3:30. He was wearing a dark jacket, and his hair was unkempt, like he hadn't brushed it in days. But what really made me uneasy was his eyes. They were too wide, too shiny, like he hadn't blinked in hours. Maybe it was just the tiredness getting to me, but there was something off about his whole vibe. He stood by the door for a moment, scanning the store. Then he approached the counter, his feet dragging across the dirty floor. When he spoke, his voice was low, almost a whisper. "You're working the night shift, huh?" I nodded, keeping my response short. "Yeah." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he just stared at me, like he was looking through me. I tried to ignore it, but I could feel the hairs on my neck standing up. I've had my fair share of oddball customers, but this guy was something else. Finally, he broke the silence. "You ever feel like you're being watched?" My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't the question that threw me off, but the way he asked it. Like he knew something I didn't. I forced a chuckle, trying to keep it light. "No, it's just a quiet night." He leaned in a bit closer, his face almost too close to mine. "You're sure? Because I can feel it," he said, his words dragging out like he was savoring each one. Before I could respond, a car pulled up outside, headlights briefly flashing through the grimy windows. Mark's head snapped toward the door, and for a split second, I thought I saw something in his eyes. Something not human. I blinked, and it was gone. When I looked back, he was already halfway to the door. He paused, turned his head, and muttered, "They'll be back for you. You're not safe here, man." Then he walked out, disappearing into the night. I stood there for a minute, staring at the door. Was he on something? Maybe, but there was this lingering feeling that wouldn't shake. I've worked night shifts before, but that one felt different. His words, his presence, it wasn't like anything I'd experienced. I tried to push it out of my head and went back to what I was doing. But then, the power flickered. Just for a second. The lights went dim and then popped back on. It wasn't a big deal, but that's when it hit me. The air, the weight in the room, the silence. It all felt too heavy. I remember thinking, okay, just get through this shift. You've done worse. But deep down, I knew something bad was coming. Something I couldn't escape. And that was when I heard the knock. The knock came out of nowhere, sharp and unsettling. Asterisk knock. Knock. Asterisk not a door knock. This was different. It sounded like it came from the storage room in the back. Now, I knew no one was supposed to be back there. The store was dead quiet, and it was just me. Unless Mark had somehow snuck around or, I don't know, was playing some sick joke. I froze for a second, trying to make sense of it. Couldn't be the wind, the back room had no windows. And it didn't sound like the usual creaks the building made. No, this was deliberate. It was like someone was trying to get my attention. I set my gum down and grabbed the flashlight from under the counter, my hands trembling slightly. The silence in the store grew thicker. The hum of the fridges and the soft buzzing of the fluorescent lights overhead seemed to fade, and all I could hear was my own heartbeat. Thump thump, thump thump. The knock came again. Asterisk knock. Knock. Asterisk this time I couldn't ignore it. I slowly moved toward the back room, my footsteps too loud in the otherwise still air. I remember telling myself it was probably some kind of prank. Maybe Mark was back, or it was just a mouse or something, but deep down I knew that wasn't true. I could feel it. I reached the back room door, and it was just as I remembered, locked the way it should be. I ran my hand along the edges of the door frame, the cold steel of the handle chilling my fingers, and as I went to twist it open, I felt something. A shift in the air, like I wasn't supposed to be there. I hesitated, and then, as if in response, a voice, soft, like a whisper from behind the door, spoke. "Help me." I froze. My breath hitched in my chest, and my stomach churned. It wasn't a regular voice. It wasn't the voice of someone who needed help. It was wrong, like it was dragging itself through the air, scraping its way into my ears. "Help me?" It repeated, but this time, there was a desperation in it that made my skin crawl. I didn't know what to do. I stood there, staring at the door, my mind racing. Could it be someone in there? Maybe someone locked themselves in? But I hadn't heard anything earlier. No screams, no bangs, nothing. And there was no way anyone could have gotten in without me noticing. I reached out, hand trembling, and turned the handle. It opened with a slow, creaking sound that echoed through the dead silence of the store. The light inside the back room was dim, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally across the walls. I stepped inside. At first, I didn't see anything. It was just shelves of cleaning supplies, boxes of merchandise, and old, forgotten stock. But then I saw it, a figure in the corner, slumped over, just barely visible in the darkness. At first, I thought it was just a mannequin or some pile of junk, but then it shifted. The shape moved, and I realized it was a person. My breath caught in my throat. "Who's there?" I called out, voice shaky. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it slowly turned its head. The face that looked back at me wasn't human. It wasn't even close. Its eyes were wide open, unnaturally so, and its mouth was stretched into a grotesque grin, too wide for any person to have. The skin, pale, waxy, almost translucent, was stretched tight over the bones of its face, and its hair hung in matted clumps around its head. It didn't blink. It just stared, its neck jerking unnaturally as it twisted to look at me. I couldn't move. That's when it spoke again, but this time, the voice wasn't desperate. It was mocking. "Asterisk, I told you. They'd be back for you. Asterisk." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and suddenly, the air felt like it was closing in. I tried to back away, but my feet felt like they were stuck to the floor, like the room was pulling me in. And then the whispering started. It wasn't just from the thing in the corner anymore. The entire room, the entire store, was filled with it. Hundreds of voices, all whispering in unison, repeating the same words. "They're coming for you. They're coming." I had to get out. I finally managed to force myself to turn around and sprint back to the front of the store. But as I did, I could hear the sound of footsteps behind me. Slow, heavy, dragging across the floor like something was chasing me. I didn't dare look back. I slammed the back door shut and locked it, but the whispers didn't stop. They seemed to be everywhere, vibrating in my bones, filling the air. Couldn't breathe. Then I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a shadow moving across the window. It wasn't just any shadow. This one was long, stretching across the floor, dragging itself as if it was alive. I knew I wasn't imagining it. I could hear the sound of something. Asterisk, someone asterisk, scraping against the glass, slowly, deliberately. The shadow paused, then moved again, like it was circling, waiting. My heart pounded in my chest, and all I could think was, what was out there? The lights flickered again, this time longer than before, and when they came back on, there was someone standing outside, staring in. A figure, standing completely still, just beyond the reach of the store's lights. But something was off. Its face, when the light hit it, it wasn't a person's face at all. It was hollow, like a mask of skin pulled over a skull. It was them. They were back. I was paralyzed, frozen in place, my breath shallow as I stared at the figure outside. My mind screamed at me to move, to run, to do anything, but my body wouldn't respond. I don't know if it was fear or something else. Some primal instinct that made me want to stay as still as possible, hoping whatever was out there would just go away. But it didn't. It never did. The figure didn't budge. It just stood there, motionless, staring directly into the store. I couldn't see its eyes, not like a person's anyway. It was as if the skin around its eyes was stretched too tight, like it couldn't blink, couldn't look away, as if it was waiting. And that's when I realized something. There was no reflection, no gleam of light, no shimmer of glass, just blackness where its eyes should have been. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. It was like the air itself had been sucked out of my lungs. And then I heard the whisper again, closer now. Asterisk, you're not safe, Dave. Asterisk, it was my name. It was unmistakable. It was the same voice as before, that sickly whisper, but it was no longer in my head. This time it was coming from behind me. I spun around, heart hammering, but there was no one there. The store was empty, or so I thought. That's when the feeling hit me. The one you get when you know something is wrong, like the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees, and the shadows started to creep in on their own. I knew, deep down, that whatever was happening, it wasn't just some hallucination or a bad dream. It was real, and I was in the middle of it. Suddenly, I heard a scraping sound, a soft, slow drag, like something was being pulled across the floor. My eyes snapped to the door at the back of the store, the one I had locked not 2 minutes ago. It was shaking. I didn't know what was on the other side, but I could feel it. Something was trying to get in. It wasn't just some freaky guy messing with me. I don't know how I knew, but I could feel it. The knocking started again. Knock. 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 Each hit was harder than the last, like something or someone was pounding with all its strength. The back door rattled in its frame, and then, as if it couldn't take it anymore, it flew open. I wasn't ready. My heart skipped, and I had no time to react. Standing in the doorway wasn't a person. It was a thing. It was tall, way too tall. Its head almost scraping against the ceiling, and its body was twisted, like its spine had been bent in all the wrong directions. Its arms hung too low, unnaturally long, dragging the ground as it walked forward. It was gaunt, like it hadn't eaten in weeks. Its skin was thin, almost translucent, and I could see the outline of its bones beneath. But the worst part? Its face. I can't even describe it properly, because I've never seen anything like it before, and I hope to God I never will again. Its eyes, those black holes where eyes should be, stared right through me. And then, it opened its mouth impossibly wide, stretching the skin across its jaw, and I heard that voice again, the one from the back room, the one from outside the store. You shouldn't have stayed, Dave. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. I wanted to scream, but my throat was locked tight, like someone had their hand around it, squeezing. The thing took a step forward, dragging its foot with that horrible scraping sound, and I knew I couldn't outrun it. There was nowhere to go. The front door was locked, and I'd never make it to the back in time. And then I heard the worst thing of all, the whispering, the hundreds of voices, the same as before. But this time, it wasn't just the store. It was outside too. The walls, the floor, the windows. They were whispering, too. Felt like the entire world had turned against me. Like I was surrounded. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in place, staring at that thing, but I finally snapped out of it when I heard something even worse. The sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, coming from the street outside. At first, I thought it was just the wind, or some car passing by. But then I saw them. Shadows, figures, indistinct but clearly moving, slowly approaching the gas station from across the parking lot. I had no idea how many there were, but the closer they got, the more I could make out. They were tall, too tall to be human. Some had the same twisted, contorted shapes as the one in the back room. Others, well, I couldn't even tell if they were human at all. They were all staring at me. I don't know how long I stood there, locked in that moment. But when the first of them reached the door, I couldn't take it anymore. I bolted. I didn't look back. I didn't care if it was the thing in the back room or one of those things at the door. I ran out the side entrance, threw open the gate and just kept running. Through the parking lot, past the trucks, through the alleyways. I didn't stop until I was halfway across town, gasping for air, hands shaking. I still don't know what happened that night, or what those things were. I don't even know if I'll ever truly be able to explain it. All I know is that I'm lucky to be alive, and that I'll never work another night shift again. As for that place, I drove by a few days later. The gas station was still there, the lights flickering just like they always did. But the door, it was wide open, and the same figure I saw standing outside, it was gone. I think whatever was there, whatever they were, is still out there, watching, waiting, and I don't think they'll forget my name anytime soon. But I'm not sticking around to find out. So, if you ever get the urge to work a late shift at a quiet gas station, trust me, don't. Because some nights, the night never ends. I tried to shake it off, you know? Just tell myself it was some kind of fever dream, a panic-induced hallucination. The kind of stuff your brain pulls when you're pushed to the edge. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. You don't just imagine things like that. I wasn't losing it. I wasn't going crazy. Whatever I saw that night, it was real. I had to get away from the city for a while, clear my head. So I packed my bags, drove out of town, and stayed with a friend for a few weeks. Didn't talk about it much, just kept my head down. But that feeling, the one I had when I looked over my shoulder and saw those things in the distance, *, it never left me. It stayed with me like a dark cloud, hanging over me everywhere I went. But then 2 weeks later, I get this call. It's the gas station's manager. His name's Frank. Guy's been running the place for years. He sounds almost apologetic when he asks me if I can come back and work a shift. Now, Frank's not the kind of guy to call and beg, so I know something's up. "You there, Dave?" he asks, his voice shaky. "Yeah. What's up, Frank? I don't know how to say this, but, well, we had some issues with the place. Weird things. Really weird things happening after you left," he says, voice low, almost like he's afraid to speak. I feel my chest tighten. "What kind of issues?" Frank pauses, his breathing heavy. "People have been talking. Customers, employees. We got a new guy working there, Mike. He saw something. Saw them." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. "What are you talking about?" Frank doesn't respond right away. I can hear him shifting in his chair on the other end. "He's not the only one, Dave. The place, it's changed since you left. People are saying it's cursed. Like the whole damn building's haunted. And now, Mike, he's gone, disappeared. Just like you said. That was it for me. I didn't need to hear more. I told him I couldn't go back. I'd left for a reason. But Frank wasn't done. "Look, Dave, I don't know what's going on. But, well, you've seen something, right? You've seen it too. And we need your help. People are getting scared. There's something at that station. Something that's waking up." I could feel the blood drain from my face. I've seen it, sure. But the thought of going back there, walking back into that place after everything I'd gone through, it was too much. But I owed it to the others, right? To the employees, the new guy, Mike, and whoever else had worked the shift since I left. Someone had to stop it. I couldn't just leave them there. So, against my better judgment, I agreed to go back. I walked in around midnight. The place looked normal at first glance. The fluorescent lights buzzed, and the aisles were stocked with snacks and drinks, just like before. But there was something different about the air. The place felt heavier, almost suffocating. The hum of the coolers was louder, more oppressive, and the shadows seemed thicker than they should be, stretching unnaturally long across the floor. Frank wasn't there when I arrived. He'd left a note saying he'd be back in a few hours. I was on my own. First, everything was quiet. Too quiet. The minutes dragged on like hours. I sat behind the counter, looking out the window, trying to shake the feeling of being watched. Every little sound made me jump. The rustle of a plastic bag, the click of the coffee machine, the hum of the fridges. And then it happened. I heard the knock. 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 It was soft at first, but there was no mistaking it. I knew exactly where it was coming from, the storage room, the same place. The same door. I felt my chest tighten, my heart racing. I tried to talk myself out of it. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe just the wind again, or one of the fridges acting up. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. The knock came again, louder this time, more urgent. My fingers hovered over the keys on the register. I don't know why, but I stood up and moved toward the back. I had to face it. I had to know what was happening once and for all. I reached the back room and stood in front of the door. My hand was shaking as I reached for the handle. It felt cold, almost unnaturally so. The same cold that had filled the air that night, the night I saw that thing. The thing that was now in my mind, following me everywhere. I opened the door. The room was empty. The same dusty shelves. The same old stock. But as my eyes swept over the room, I saw something that made my stomach churn. There, in the corner, was something new. A figure, just standing there, not moving, just watching. At first, I thought it was another mannequin or some trick of the light. But no, it wasn't. I could see it clearly now. The shape was humanoid, but wrong. Its limbs were too long, too thin, its body a twisted silhouette of someone, or something, *unnatural star. Its head was tilted to one side, and when it looked at me, I could see its eyes. Black, empty, hollow, not even pupils. Just endless voids like black holes in the middle of its face. I froze. My pulse roared in my ears. Took a step forward. Then another. And another. I don't know how long I stood there, unable to move. My body was frozen in terror. The thing just kept coming closer, each step more deliberate, more unnatural than the last. I could feel its presence, like a weight pressing down on me. And then, in that horrible, soul-chilling voice, it whispered, "You shouldn't have come back, Dave." I didn't think. I just turned and ran. I don't know how I made it out of that store. It's all a blur of adrenaline and panic. 1 second I was standing there, frozen, staring into that thing's eyes, those hollow eyes, and the next second I was out the back door, slamming it shut behind me. I didn't care that I didn't have a plan. I didn't care about anything except getting as far away from that place as I could. But I didn't run far enough. I remember getting into my car, heart hammering, hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel. I was gasping for air, like I couldn't fill my lungs enough. The engine roared to life as I sped out of the parking lot, but it didn't feel like I was going anywhere at all. It was as if the world around me had gone wrong, twisted in ways I couldn't understand. And that's when it started. At first, I thought it was just the stress getting to me. The shadows in the corner of my eyes, the occasional flicker of light. But then I saw it, and I knew there was no way out. Something was following me. I kept looking in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see one of those things, one of the shadowed figures, chasing me down. But every time I checked, the road was empty. Nothing but the endless stretch of asphalt behind me. Until the road curved. That's when I saw it, just for a second, I swear. A figure standing by the side of the road, barely visible in the dark. Its body too thin, too long. It wasn't human. I couldn't even tell if it was a person at all. The shadows clung to it like it was a part of them. I almost missed it. I almost convinced myself it was a trick of the lights or the trees, or maybe a pile of garbage, something normal. But the moment I looked back, my stomach dropped. The figure was gone. I slammed on the brakes, screeching to a halt in the middle of the road. My pulse was racing, my breath coming in sharp gasps. I pulled over, my hands still trembling as I wiped the sweat from my forehead. I told myself it was nothing, couldn't have been real. But then, there it was again. A soft tapping sound, like nails scraping against glass. My heart skipped a beat as I realized it wasn't coming from outside the car. It was coming from inside, from the back seat. I whipped around, my eyes scanning the empty space, and for a split second, just a split second, I saw it. The same figure, the same dark shape, twisted and wrong, sitting right behind me in the rearview mirror. Its eyes locked on me. Couldn't breathe. And then it spoke. "We've been waiting for you." I felt the blood drain from my face as the voice slithered into my ears, cold and suffocating, like it was being spoken from the darkest pit of my soul. The figure's mouth opened impossibly wide, its jaw stretching far too far, and I could hear the sound of bones cracking, snapping as it grinned at me. I didn't think. I just acted. I threw the car into drive and punched the gas, the tires screeching as I sped down the road. The landscape blurred around me. Trees, buildings, streets. Everything became a smear of dark shapes and shadows. I could feel it, though, behind me, following me, chasing me no matter how fast I went. I couldn't outrun it. The thing, whatever it was in my head now. It was in my thoughts, in my bones, in every cell of my body. I could hear its whispers even over the sound of the engine, low and insistent, saying my name over and over again. Asterisk Dave, asterisk. I didn't know how far I drove. I didn't care. I just needed to get away. I needed to leave everything behind. But when I finally glanced in the rearview mirror again, it wasn't just one figure anymore. There were more. Shapes, shadows, all twisted and wrong, standing in the distance, on the road behind me, in the trees along the edge of the highway. They were there, watching me, waiting. I was surrounded. I felt my chest tighten again. My hands were slick with sweat. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I didn't know where I was going anymore. My mind was spiraling, trapped in this nightmare, and I couldn't wake up. Finally, I did what I swore I'd never do again. I called Frank. I didn't know if it would help, but I had to try. He was the only one who might understand. He'd been there longer than anyone, seen things, heard things. If anyone knew what was happening, it had to be him. I heard the phone ring, the sound too loud in the silence of my car. When Frank picked up, I could barely speak. My voice was cracked, desperate. Frank, they're following me. Frank didn't respond at first. There was a long pause on the other end, and I could hear his breath, slow and careful. Where are you, Dave? He asked quietly. I don't know. I don't know what to do. They're coming for me. Asterisk. I could barely get the words out. The panic was rising again, suffocating me. Listen to me, Frank said, his voice strangely calm, too calm for the situation. You need to stop. Stop driving. Right now. What? Are you crazy? I can't stop. They're right behind me. Stop the car, Frank repeated, his voice firm. Trust me. You're only making it worse. I didn't want to listen. I wanted to scream at him, tell him he had no idea what was happening, that I couldn't just stop. But something in his voice made me hesitate. Something about the way he said it. I pulled over to the side of the road, my body shaking violently. The sound of my breath filled the air, and for a moment, everything was eerily quiet. Okay, I said, barely above a whisper. I've stopped. Now what? Turn off the car. Sit quietly. Close your eyes. I didn't know why, but I did it. I turned off the engine, the silence now pressing in on me like a weight. The night was suffocating, everything around me too still. Now, Frank said. You have to wait. You're not alone, Dave. You've never been alone. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I knew it. I was never alone. Not anymore. Not with them watching. And then Frank said something that made my blood run cold. They're never going to stop coming for you. You're already marked. That's when I heard the tapping. Asterisk knock. 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 Asterisk this time, I knew it wasn't just in my head. It was real. And I was right in the middle of it. I should have known. I should have known. I sat there, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white, my entire body trembling. The sound of the tapping, the slow, deliberate knocks, was now unmistakable. The thing was right outside the car. It wasn't a distant sound anymore. It was close. Too close. I didn't dare look. Couldn't look. Frank! My voice cracked. What do I do? What the hell do I do? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Frank's voice was low, almost like he was whispering to avoid being heard. You have to face it, Dave. You have to face them. I didn't want to. Couldn't. I had come this far, trying to escape, running, driving, anything to put distance between myself and those things, but Frank was right. There was no escaping it. I knew it now. I wasn't just running from the gas station. I wasn't running from the figures, the shadows, the whispers. No, I was running from something much older. Something that had been hunting people like me for years. And the more I ran, the more I fed it, drew it closer. "Look out the window, Dave," Frank said softly. "Do it now." My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly turned my head. Through the windshield, the night was still. Too still. But I could see the trees lining the road, their branches swaying in the wind, casting long, eerie shadows. And then I saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the trees, barely visible in the darkness. No, it wasn't a figure. It was many figures. One by one, they started to emerge from the shadows. They moved slowly, like they were drawn toward me, towards the car. And as they got closer, I could make out their twisted forms. Their long limbs, their gaunt, bone-thin bodies, their faces, their faces star. Hollow eyes, stretched mouths, gaping, hungry. They moved in unison, like a macabre dance, their feet scraping the earth with a slow, steady rhythm. They were coming for me. I wanted to scream, to slam the car into reverse and speed away. But I couldn't. I was frozen. The air inside the car felt thick, like it was suffocating me, and the whispering started again. So loud now, so constant, it filled my head. "You can't run, Dave. You can't hide. You are ours." I turned the key, but the car wouldn't start. The engine sputtered, coughed, and then died completely. Panic flooded my chest, my breathing ragged. I couldn't escape. I looked back outside. The figures were getting closer. One of them, taller than the rest, stepped forward from the pack, and I could see its face more clearly now. It was worse than I imagined. Its eyes, black as night, locked onto mine, and the skin around its mouth stretched back in a grin, revealing rows of jagged teeth. Its voice slithered through the air, a low, guttural whisper. "You belong to us now, Dave." And that's when it all hit me. That's when the truth crashed down on me like a wave. I hadn't just stumbled into something. This wasn't some freak accident. I hadn't just gotten unlucky. I was marked. I wasn't the first. I wouldn't be the last. These things, whatever they were, had been hunting, waiting. And now they had me. I had been chosen. There was no escape. No way out. I looked at the rearview mirror again, and this time, I saw something different. It wasn't just the shadows from outside. It was something in the back seat, something moving slowly, rising up from the floor. A figure. It had been there the whole time, just waiting, watching. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I could feel my body shaking, my breath catching in my throat. As the figure in the mirror came closer, its twisted face filling the glass. And then, I heard Frank again, but his voice wasn't coming from the phone anymore. It was coming from the back seat, from the thing behind me. "They'll never stop, Dave. Not until they take everything." And in that moment, I realized I was never supposed to escape. I was just another soul for them to take, another victim to add to their collection. It wasn't a question of if they'd get me. It was just a matter of when. The tapping on the window grew louder. The figures were almost upon me now, their faces pressed against the glass, eyes wide and empty, grinning as they watched me. The thing behind me in the mirror wasn't even trying to hide anymore. It was right there, in the seat, beside me, its breath cold on my neck. And then I felt it, a hand on my shoulder, cold, sharp fingers digging into my skin. I jerked away, but it didn't matter. The shadows had already wrapped themselves around me, pulling me in, tightening, suffocating me. Everything went dark. The next morning, when the cops found my car on the side of the road, it was empty, completely empty. There was no sign of me, no blood, no struggle, just the car, and the eerie, unsettling silence. They couldn't explain it. They thought I had run off, gone missing, maybe, but there were no tracks, no evidence I'd ever been there. The only thing they found? A message scrawled on the passenger seat in what looked like dirt or dust. You shouldn't have stayed, Dave. Asterisk, they never figured out what happened to me. But you can be damn sure I won't ever tell them. Because some things, they never leave you. And some places, they never let you go. So, if you ever find yourself working that late shift, in a place that's just a little too quiet, a little too still, don't ignore the feeling. Don't ignore the whispers, the shadows, the things that move when they shouldn't. Because they're watching. And once you've been marked, they'll never stop coming for you.